They thought they erased you. They thought if they buried what happened, you would stay buried too. But life doesn't work like that. You've been walking through the fire, quietly, while they've been desperately pretending it never happened. They covered it up, built walls around it, and laughed as if it would stay hidden forever. But what they forgot is, truth doesn't die in silence. It waits, and now it's breaking loose. The panic has begun, and you're about to see how powerful you really are when you're standing on the ashes of everything they tried to destroy. Watch this video till the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and become part of this unstoppable journey. Asterisk, they didn't just try to hide what happened, they tried to hide you. When people cover things up, it's rarely just about the story. It's about the person behind. The story, you. They didn't want the truth to come out, because the truth would have meant facing you, facing your strength, facing your survival. They needed you buried, because if you stayed buried, they could live with what they did. So they covered it. They silenced it. They pretended you were nothing but a footnote. But here you are, still standing, still breathing, still carrying what they couldn't face. There's a different kind of pain when you realize they didn't just erase the moment. They tried to erase you. It cuts deeper, because it's not about a mistake. It's about pretending you never mattered. And that's where they miscalculated. What they buried didn't die. What they ignored didn't disappear. What they feared grew. They thought they could control the story by silencing your part in it. But silence is a dangerous thing. It doesn't destroy, it amplifies. The more they buried you, the louder you became. The more they ignored you, the sharper you became. And now, the very thing they tried to erase has become the one thing that will haunt them. Your existence, your truth, your survival. They buried you thinking it was over. But they didn't realize you were the seed. And seeds don't die in the dark. They grow. You are not what they buried. You are what they built by trying to erase you. Asterisk, there's a silence no one talks about. It's not peaceful. It's not calm. It's the silence of being ignored, of being dismissed, of being left to carry something you never asked for, all by yourself. You've been there, haven't you? In that space where you wanted someone to see you, to hear you, to tell you that what happened mattered. But all you got was silence. Not because the story wasn't important, but because it made them uncomfortable. It was easier for them to look away. It was easier to leave you alone with it. And when you're alone in that silence for too long, you start to wonder, maybe they're right. Maybe this doesn't matter. Maybe you don't matter. That's how silence breaks you. It makes you question the weight of your own experience. It makes you doubt yourself in a way no words ever could. But here's the thing they didn't understand. Silence does break you, but it also builds you. It forces you to stand up when no one is clapping. It pushes you to keep breathing when no one notices you're suffocating. You didn't survive the silence by accident. You learned how to hold yourself together when no one else would. And that changed you. That quiet pain turned you into someone they never expected. While they were busy pretending you didn't exist, you were building something inside. A fire, a strength, a voice. It doesn't happen all at once. At first, you just want to be seen. You want someone to tell you you're not crazy, that what happened is real. But the more you wait, the more you realize, sometimes that voice you've been waiting to hear, it has to come from you. Sometimes, you are the only one who can stand up for your story. Sometimes, you are the only one who can break the silence. And when you finally do, when you finally speak for yourself, you don't just speak for you. You speak for every silent, version of you that was buried along the way. You speak for the days you swallowed your own voice to keep the peace. You speak for the nights you replayed every moment, wondering if you were the problem. You speak, and the silence shatters. That's what they never expected. They thought leaving you alone in that silence would break you forever. But they forgot that silence doesn't last. It either destroys you, or it builds something so strong it can no longer be ignored. And you didn't just survive the silence. You became something inside it that no one can ever silence again. They built it so carefully, their lies, their stories, their perfect little version of reality. They made it look so strong, didn't they? Like something that could never fall. And you stood there, watching them stack lie on top of lie, wondering if maybe you were the one who was wrong, wondering if maybe the truth wasn't enough. Because for a long time, it looked like they were winning. You told yourself to wait. Maybe someone would see it. Maybe someone else would call it out. But no one did, because they were too good at hiding it. Too good at making you look like the problem. And while you waited, you were carrying the weight of what they built. Their silence, their games, their false stories about who you are. You started to believe maybe this is just the way things are. Maybe this is all you get. That's what it feels like when you watch people get away with it. It's like the walls around you are closing in and you don't know if you're trapped inside, or if you've been locked out completely. But here's what they never tell you. Lies don't stay standing. They rot from the inside. The collapse doesn't always come loudly. Sometimes it starts slowly, almost invisible, until suddenly the cracks are too wide to fix. They knew. They knew what they were doing wasn't built to last. But they kept going because they thought they could outrun the collapse. They thought they could bury it deep enough, fast enough, far enough. But the truth doesn't stay buried. It rises. It waits. It finds its way through every crack. And now they're scrambling. Now they're losing control. Now the story is slipping out of their hands. And there's nothing they can do to stop it. You don't have to chase revenge. You don't have to waste your life proving anything to them. The collapse always comes. It was always coming. And you were never the one falling apart. You've been standing in the rubble they created, thinking you were broken, thinking you didn't have a way out. But look around. You're still here. You're breathing. You're thinking. You're moving. They built something false, and you carried something real. That's why it all comes down. That's why they're losing control now. Because the truth has a weight that never disappears. And maybe for the first time, you're realizing you don't have to carry their lies anymore. You don't have to hold up what was never yours to fix. It's falling. Let it fall. You're not trapped inside it. You were never trapped. Asterisk, they made sure everyone saw you through their eyes. They told the story. First, they shaped it, twisted it, stretched it until it didn't even look like you anymore. And the worst part, people believed them. You were trapped inside a version of yourself you didn't even recognize. You watched people judge you, distance themselves from you, look through you like you were nothing more than the story they heard. It's a lonely thing watching yourself become a stranger to the world because someone else decided who you are. You start wondering if you'll ever get the chance to be seen for who you really are, or if you'll always be stuck inside the version they created. They controlled the story. They controlled what people knew. They controlled what parts of you were allowed to exist in the room. And you stayed quiet, not because you didn't have something to say, but because no one was listening. No one cared to look deeper. It was easier to believe the version they were handed than to ask you who you really are. You stayed quiet for so long that you almost started to believe them yourself. You almost gave up on the idea that your truth could ever be louder than their story. But silence isn't the same thing as surrender. You were quiet, but you were still watching. You were still learning. You were still breathing. And the more you sat with yourself, the more you realized something that changes everything. You don't need their permission to rewrite the story. You don't need their approval to exist in the version of yourself that is true. The story isn't in their hands anymore. It's yours now. You get to speak it. You get to shape it. You get to decide what survives and what fades. And when you start telling the real story, when you stop trying to fix the version they created, take your life back. Not by screaming, not by convincing, but by living in your truth so fully that their story falls apart on its own. Because their story was never strong enough to hold the weight of who you really are. You don't need to chase the people who walked away. You don't need to beg them to come back and see the real you, because you've seen you, and that's what matters now. They controlled the story until now you do, and no one can take that back. They always thought they were in control. They moved the pieces, they locked the doors, they shaped the version of reality that worked for them. And you spent so long trying to survive inside the story they controlled that you almost forgot the truth was still alive somewhere inside you. You almost forgot what it felt like to trust yourself. But the truth never really dies. It waits. It pushes against the edges. It grows heavy, even in silence. They thought they could bury it forever. They thought if they denied it loud enough, if they pushed you low enough, it would eventually disappear. And for a while, it seemed like maybe they were right. Maybe it would all stay hidden. Maybe the walls would hold. But the truth doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't care who's ready. It doesn't stay where it doesn't belong. It breaks loose. And when it does, there's nothing they can do to stop it. You've felt it, haven't you? That quiet pressure inside you, that build-up, that weight. You've been carrying, waiting for the right moment to let it go. And maybe you've been afraid. Afraid that if you let it break loose, everything around you will fall apart. But what if the thing that's supposed to fall isn't you? What if the collapse isn't your destruction? What if it's your release? The things they told you to keep quiet, the parts of you they wanted hidden, those are the things that can't stay locked up anymore. You've tried holding it in, keeping it small, pretending it doesn't matter. But it does matter. It always mattered. And now it's moving. It's breaking loose. And the people who built their lives on top of that silence, they're starting to panic. They can't hold it back anymore. They can't unsee it. They can't undo what's already shifting. You don't have to fight for it to break loose. You don't have to scream to make it real. The truth is already moving with or without their permission. And here's the part you didn't see coming. When the truth breaks loose, you finally realize you were never the one falling apart. It was never you. It was everything they built that couldn't survive the weight of what's real. You've been bracing yourself like you're the one who's going to shatter. But the walls aren't closing in on you. The walls are breaking open for you. And what's breaking loose now? That's yours. That's your story. That's your freedom. And no one can stop that now. Asterisk, they tried to destroy you. Not just with what they did, but with what they didn't do. The silence. The denial, the way they made you carry what wasn't yours to carry. They thought if they pushed hard enough, you'd collapse, that you'd fold under the weight, that you'd break so badly you'd never come back. And maybe for a while they almost had you. Because it's not easy to survive something no one else wants to admit happened. It's not easy to wake up with the pieces they shattered and figure out how to keep moving without breaking yourself all over again. You've spent so much time trying to figure out why they did it, why they walked away, why they chose to protect the story instead of protecting you. And the answers never came. They probably never will. But that's not what matters anymore. What matters is you survived it. And you didn't just survive, you survived alone. You survived without the apologies you deserved, without the support you needed, without the understanding that would have made it easier to breathe. They thought survival would leave you empty. They thought surviving would leave you bitter, weak, unfinished. But they never understood what survival really is. Survival is not some sad, broken version of you that barely made it. Survival is what happens when you stand up in the middle of the wreckage, bruised and unrecognizable, and keep breathing anyway. Survival is a weapon, because now you carry something they don't. You carry the kind of strength that comes from dragging yourself out of something you were never supposed to escape. You carry the kind of depth that only comes from walking through a fire alone and not losing yourself in the smoke. They don't have that. They never will. And maybe that's what scares them now. Not that you survived, but that you survived so completely they can't touch you anymore. They can't reach you. They can't tear you down with the same lies they used to control you. Your survival is not just a chapter you move past. Your survival is the weapon you carry now. The beautiful, undeniable proof that no matter what they built against you, you didn't fall. You were never the victim they wanted you to believe you were. You were the quiet storm they didn't see coming. They didn't break you. They sharpened you. And now the most dangerous thing you carry is the fact that you made it. Asterisk, they saw something in you that you hadn't even seen yet. That's why they tried to crush it. That's why they worked so hard to put it out. There was a fire in you, something untamed, something dangerous to the story they wanted to control. And they were afraid of what you could become if you ever realized it was yours. So they tried to smother it, not with force, but with doubt, with silence, with shame. They made you question yourself. They made you believe that your fire was the problem, that your voice was too much, that your strength was a threat that needed to be contained. And for a while, you believed them. You made yourself smaller. You lowered your voice. You stepped out of your own way so they could walk comfortably through your life like they owned it. They thought the fire would die like that. Quietly, slowly. They thought, if you carried enough guilt, enough loneliness, enough the fire would shrink until it disappeared. But here's what they didn't see coming. The fire didn't die. It went quiet. It stayed low, waiting inside you, waiting for the moment you would stop asking them for permission to feel it again. And maybe that's where you are now. Maybe you've been sitting in that quiet place, wondering if you're allowed to pick up the pieces they made you put down, wondering if you're allowed to burn again. You are, because that fire never belonged to them. It was never theirs to control, never theirs to judge, never theirs to silence. It's yours. It's always been yours. And now it's time to stop apologizing for carrying it. You don't have to dim it to make other people feel safe. You don't have to shrink it so they can feel comfortable. You don't have to break yourself into smaller pieces to fit inside their fragile story. You get to reclaim what they were afraid of. You get to walk through the same spaces they told you to tiptoe through, and this time you don't lower your eyes. You don't soften your voice. You don't set yourself on fire to keep their comfort intact. They feared your fire because they knew what would happen if you stopped hiding it. And now you've stopped. That's the part they can't undo. That's the part they can't unsee. The fire is yours now, fully, not because someone handed it back to you, but because you finally decided to take it. Asterisk, you've spent so much of your life carrying things that didn't belong to you. The lies, the guilt, the silence, the version of yourself they needed you to be. You wore it because you thought you had to. You thought if you carried it long enough, maybe you'd finally earn your way back into the places where you were pushed out. Maybe you'd finally be enough. But the weight never left, did it? It stayed. It stayed even when you smiled. Even when you told yourself you were fine. It stayed because you weren't living as you were living as the version they built. For you, that's not freedom. That's survival inside a story that never really belonged to you. You kept walking because you didn't know you had another option. You didn't know you were allowed to put it down. You didn't know you could step outside of it. When people spend long enough shaping how you see yourself, you start believing that maybe they're right. That maybe this is all you'll ever be. But you were never meant to carry their version of you. You were never meant to walk in the shape they designed to keep you small. And freedom. Freedom isn't about running away from them. It's about finally choosing you. It's about choosing what stays, choosing what matters, choosing what you will no longer carry. The truth is you don't have to hold on to the story they wrote for you anymore. You don't have to keep explaining yourself to people who never really wanted to understand you. You don't have to shrink to fit into the spaces they locked you in. The door was open the whole time. You just didn't see it. Because the weight they put on your shoulders convinced you that you didn't have the strength to walk through it. But you do. You always did. And now you're standing at the edge of everything they told you was off limits. Now you're starting to see that freedom was never something they could give you. It was something you were always allowed to take. They told you who you were. They told you who you could be, and for a long time you listened. But what happens now is yours. This life, this space, this story, it's yours. And the freedom you were always meant to have. It's not on the other side of their approval. It's not waiting for you in the version they would finally accept. It's here, right where you put the weight down. Right where you decide you never needed their permission to begin.